Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or whatever time of the day it is, wherever you are. Good and welcome to you to Changes. This is Sally Ember, Ed.D. Today is episode 47, coming back to the show in 2016, January 20th, after a 2-month hiatus, with one of my favorite guests, a returning author from a year ago on episode 14, John W. Howell. Welcome, John.
Well, thank you, Sally. It's really great to be here, and it's nice to be on an advanced episode. In other words, if this was episode 15, I'd be concerned. But as we go, I'm so glad you're successful with this.
Well, I'm not sure success is the right word. I would more call it perseverance.
That's good. That's good too, though.
All right, you have a point. I think writers, the way we are, perseverance is a huge part of how we accomplish anything.
Absolutely.
Is that we have to say to ourselves, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to keep going. I want to make sure that everybody I know is able to see what I'm able to see and write what they can do to comment about it. I am not positive that this is live right now in the way that we want. And so I am sorry if you can't see this and you're seeing it not live. I'm not seeing it showing up on the event page as having started. Not seeing it on the Google YouTube page as having started. All it says is live stream is starting soon. So I'm just going to assume it's recording, and at some point people will be able to see it. And that's the best I can do.
Well, sounds good to me too.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the things we want to talk about. You had brought up some great topics. Do you have one you'd like to start with?
Yeah, I'd really like to kind of catch everybody up from a year ago, if that's okay.
Great.
Yeah, when I was here last time, I had one book published, which was by a girl, and it was published traditionally by Martin Sisters Publishing. Since I now have published the second book called His Revenge, which is the second book of the John Cannon trilogy. And I actually did it myself. And I know, Sally, you've done self-pub too. And I just was pretty excited about the fact that I actually accomplished that feat, got the book launched on Amazon, both in EPUB and paper edition. And I'm just happy that I could do it.
Well, it is quite an accomplishment. Now, did you do all your own formatting the way I did?
I did. I read a number of formatting books, and then I had, my friends at Microsoft, their wonderful Word doc, which I found to be an excellent way to format. And I just followed the directions of setting up the proper body headings and all of that, and then went back in and did the Kindle version using the same kind of instructions, only specifically for Kindle. So yeah, I formatted it all, and it worked.
Well, I think what we're having is the problem with Google, where they think we have two different Hangouts going on, and the one that we're on is not the one they think we're doing. Oh. So I don't know how that's all going to end up. But in the meantime, here we are. And I'm going to try to get people to go to the right one, but I wish I knew which one that was. I don't understand what's going on. But I'm really glad you did your own formatting. I'm really glad that you have all those books under your belt. Do people now come to you and ask you for advice?
Well, people, those that are, shall I say, just beginning. In fact, I got a lot of people asking me advice, and I'm actually putting on a seminar in March here locally for authors who, number one, the big question is always, oh, how do I get published? Number two, the big question is, oh, how much will I make? And number three, the big question is, how did you, get to where you are today?
Okay, how do you answer number two?
Number two, how much am I going to make?
Yeah.
I come back and say, first of all, you have to ask yourself a question. The question is, one, are you writing to become rich and famous? Or are you writing because you love to write? If you're writing to become rich and famous, I would suggest an alternate path for you. If you're
why can't it be both and?
Well, you can, but I always think of it as a pyramid, much like, well, you might even call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Right at the tippy top of that pyramid is the rarefied air of famous author making tons of money. And below that are all the various stages of trying to grow into that position. And I just say, if you start off with the expectation you're going to be at the tip of the pyramid, then I think you're making a mistake for yourself, because you really should love to write, and write for all what I would call the right reasons, which is self-satisfaction, self-actualization. And then if it happens that you're rich and famous, that's all gravy.
Well, I agree with you philosophically. I agree with you certainly emotionally. I even agree with you in a moral sense. But I also have a big disagreement, not with you necessarily, John, but with the concept that we aren't allowed to make a lot of money if we love it, or that shouldn't be a priority, or it shouldn't even be what we're thinking about, that somehow it makes us less authentic as an artist or as a creative person if we even consider the fact that money might be one of our motives. And I think that's really unfair and wrong.
Yes,
and it is. Go ahead.
No, I agree with you on that. I totally agree. I separate, what I would call the snob art appeal to writing. In other words, people who only do literary fiction. They're the only ones that exist on the earth as far as real writers. I mean, I hear this all the time. That isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people starting new who want to be, John Grisham. And they think that all you have to do is get published to do that. And that to me is something that there has to be a wake-up call. First of all, you have to really be a good writer to get to that position. And second of all...
No, wait, no. I have to raise my hand as an objection. There are plenty of mediocre and poor writers who have made a lot of money.
Well, we all know the famous one, right?
There's more than one, I believe.
Well, the ultimate famous one, the 80 million book seller famous one. I agree with that. But I still say that if someone practices their craft and they do it because they want to, and they want to produce a product that they're proud of, that's the way to start. It's a good foundation.
Well, it's certainly going to make you feel better. And I agree with you that you should never promise anyone that they're going to get rich off of this. So I like that you're being honest with your people. When they come to your seminar, they will be lucky to have you.
Right. But think of you and your writing when you're in your room and you're all alone. What else do you have? I mean, if you were a billionaire or a millionaire, let's be realistic, a millionaire writer who your publisher kept bugging you because you're a little behind on your 30th book, you wouldn't need any self-actualization or any energy like that. You'd be perfectly fine with the fact the world loves you. Well, most of us sit in our room and come up sometimes with some really self-doubt. I call it a crisis of confidence. We sit there and we go, oh my God, what am I doing this for? What reason? The family comes in and say, you still at that computer? You still writing? One of those deals. So you say, well, yeah, okay. Should I be out, fixing the car, or what should I be doing? So we have all these feelings as writers. And if we can fall back to a line that we wrote that day that really, really made us happy, I think that's the kind of thing writers should look at, and not necessarily the big old reward of fame and riches. That's all.
Well, I think you're right. And, unless you're James Patterson, you do have to do all your own writing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So in that case, it is hard work, and persistence really matters.
Yep.
And so do the ways that we can motivate ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I call it in my bio, in various places, I always say, I was a prisoner of organized commerce for over 40 years, and I broke free and became a writer. And I have to ask myself, okay, you became a writer. Why didn't you become an antique car restorer, or some kind of woodworker, or some other, let's say, non-stressful kind of occupation as you retire? because I love writing.
Yeah.
Is the whole reason. I just love it. And I could do it 20 hours a day if I had the energy.
Wow. Well,
I
that's
don't.
quite a thing. Yeah, I think when people have that much affection or passion for what we're doing, we should keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So when you decided to write a series, I see that you titled it with some kind of a sequence in mind, similarly to the way I did. I can't say mine's really a sequence so much as just all the titles have the word change in them somewhere,
Right,
or
right.
relate to the concept of change. And you have progressed with your pronouns. So you go from my to his to our, where you go my girl, his revenge, our justice. How did you
Justice.
decide to do that?
It was kind of when I decided to do this series, the series really came out of a big story. In other words, I think a lot of writers do the same thing. You know, they have a story that's just way too big for a book, so maybe they do two or three. I called it a trilogy because I didn't think that the story was any bigger than 3 books. And I wanted the title, the first book, to really reflect a title of a boat, and that's why it's GRL, because the boat is a key character in the story. And the protagonist names his boat My Girl because he really feels some affection, and he's totally unassociated with any relationship.
But why does he have no letter I in My Girl?
It's a consonant, kind of all consonants, like a license plate.
They don't use vowels in license plates? I thought they did.
Well, sometimes they do, but it stands out on the back of a boat, GRL,
Okay.
because people go, well, you know, what's that? If it said my GIRL, people wouldn't necessarily have a question.
Okay.
But GRL goes by, you go grill, growl, what is that? So it's kind of a way to bring attention to the boat.
Okay.
Not that it's a convention that everybody uses. And in fact, as a fiction writer, it was a convention I invented, Sally. So there you are.
Well, people do that in advertising a lot. They'll misspell something on purpose to get our attention. So I understand that.
Exactly. And that brings me to my point. I used to be a chief marketing officer.
Okay.
So I've had advertising in my blood. So that's probably where it came from.
But you didn't keep that when you went to Revenge and Justice because those aren't the names of boats.
No, I started with, in the first book, My Girl is Totally Destroyed. So I started the story with John Cannon getting another boat that he would name his Revenge. And then I took out all the vowels, and it just looked horrible. And so I decided that John would not get another boat. He'd want one, but he wouldn't get another boat. But I kept his revenge, and here's the reason I kept that. We have to wonder who is getting revenge. Is it the protagonist, or in this case, is it the villain? And at the end of the book, the reader's going to ask the same question. Whose revenge is it? Also, I'm reminded of a saying that when you're after revenge, when you're out to get revenge, dig 2 graves. One for the person that you achieved revenge on, and one for yourself. Because what you've surely done is you've entered a path that is of your own self-destruction when you're talking about revenge. So it became, to me, his. And then Our Justice finished what I thought was the thought of the series. In other words, we all together will have justice. And then the reader is going along with me because I write in a style that brings the reader in. So we, the writer, publisher, the agents, whatever, and the reader will all have justice in the end. So I wanted to convey all that.
Well, that's really cool. I like that. And I think I have a similar concept in my books where I'm looking at the impact of the way things have influenced the people who are the main characters and the auxiliary characters in my stories because of the publicization, how do you say it? Publicizing
Yes.
of the aliens having been here for a long time, back and forth, back and forth. There being many worlds in this collective, and now Earth is officially being asked to join, and the aliens are making their presence public, and so that's all the way things start to be changing. But lots of other things also change after that, and then in the subsequent books, I try to put out the details. The first book's kind of a 30-year overview of that whole period of the main character Clara's first term as the first liaison between Earth and the Many Worlds Collective. But the second two books are about the same 5 years. And the second book is mostly from young people and young adults' perspectives. And the third book is mostly from the middle-aged and older adults' perspective. And so I'm trying to show, well, how do each of these kinds of people and each of these individuals relate to all the ways these things are changing in their lives? And from their own points of view, both because of age and other differences, how do they see it? How do they feel about it? And I'm hoping that people will get hooked into that and maybe find a favorite character or two and want to follow them. Because then when I go further into the fourth book, my novels are even numbered books that really aim toward the younger readers and have younger characters as prominent. And my odd numbered volumes have more of the middle-aged and senior characters as prominent and may appeal more to the older readers. So I'm keeping that throughout the 10-book series. I don't know if anyone's going to really figure that out unless they hear these videos or read my blurbs, but they might.
Yeah, they might. I find it really interesting that your titles scream for the reader to pick up to get the answers.
Really? Oh, yeah. That's nice feedback. Thank you.
No, I really like that because you're saying, well, what are they talking about? I mean, why did this change not work out the way they thought it would? You know, it's a compelling question.
Awesome. Awesome. So another thing that you had brought up in our previous conversations by email and in our green room conversation is that you're looking at childhood a lot and experiences of childhood and how they influence us as creative people and in other ways. And you're finishing a fourth book that has to do with that.
Right. I have the draft done. Of course, editing is another major roadblock, but it's called Consequences of Childhood, where I delve into some of the effects longer term, much like you do, longer term of certain events that happen when a person is young. I also noted, and the reason I brought it up to you was you had a wonderful post on Camp Hawthorne.
Thank you.
Where you were talking about, you know, some of the beautiful things that go on at camp. And I was a camper myself. I was an Eagle Scout as a kid and went to summer camp every year. I was born in Detroit, by the way. So summer camp was a place to go for refuge, you know, during the summer period. And I was very fascinated. I like to hear your comments about childhood, but I have this character who has a wonderful, seemingly blessed life. He first of all, out of college, is a star football player. Then he goes into the NFL, and then he becomes a Wall Street maven with a fund that he creates. And then all of a sudden, things start to deteriorate. And as they deteriorate, he is actually handling the deterioration according to the imprint that he got when he was a child. And his childhood was horrible, just horrible. So I was real interested in your camp experience, and did any of that beauty or any of that kind of feeling impact you as you wrote later in life?
Well, of course, and I think I mentioned in my post that I probably spent most of my adult life trying to imitate or replicate those exact circumstances, that environment, those kinds of communities. I joined a lot of intentional communities. I worked at a lot of summer camps as an adult. I brought my kid into some summer camp experiences once I was a mom. I really tried to figure out what is it that makes this so amazing. I joined a psychodrama group. I lived and worked in a community that I knew a lot of people in. We raised our kids together. It was a lot of it had some elements that were similar, but I think one of the things, and then also the most similar was when I found my Buddhist community and did retreats. And I went there in the summer, and there was a swimming pond, and I was in a tent, and it was all these people that I really respected and liked and were doing things similar to me. And we had a lot of important things in common, even though we weren't the same people at all and came from all different walks of life. But I never did find that sense of safety and continuity and community to be the same anywhere. And I think part of it is when you're a kid and other people are handling everything, and all you have to do is show up. That's a really unique time of life.
It is unique, and 90%, yeah. Someone once said 90% of life is showing up. And as a kid, you're actually rewarded for doing that.
And that's all you have to do. You're not responsible for the finances or the scheduling or the logistics or the facilities or the staffing or all these things we end up having to be responsible for later in life that are distracting. And as a kid, all you have to do is be there and experience everything, and hopefully you'll enjoy it, or certainly you're going to learn. And that, I think, is what I couldn't replicate as I got older, because we do have all these other responsibilities that are very distracting, and we can't just show up. But I could on retreat. On retreat, somebody else was making my meals. All I had to do was be there and meditate. I didn't have to talk to anyone. I wasn't even supposed to. And I didn't have to, I had one chore. I would just do my one chore, and then I had my own personal chores. But that was it. So for me, that was the closest.
Yeah. So did your writing, did that experience affect your writing at all?
Well, I think the main way that camp affected me as a person is that it gave me an enormous amount of self-confidence, and leadership skills grew from that. And I was allowed to utilize and perfect them as I got more and more involved in things. And I was rewarded. I didn't put this in the post, but they had a special thing that you could acquire that's called being a skipper. And I think I talked about it a little bit, but at the camp, it was like a combination of waterfront prowess and swimming and boating and sailing, and then camp crafts, and then being a leader and being well regarded, what they called up the hill, which was away from the lake, in the dry land kinds of stuff. And if you did all that, and you had to take a written test, and the staff all had to say, yes, we want this person to be a skipper, then in the final campfire for that session of 3 or 4 weeks, you would be announced as the skipper. And there would only be 6 or 8 of us out of the whole camp every year that would be announced that way. But once you were announced that way, you kept it. You didn't have to keep qualifying. And getting that was one of the biggest achievements of my life. It was a huge thing for me. And I think it gave me the idea that I could achieve. And so when you say, how did it affect me as a writer? I think that's how it affected me, because I thought, if I can do this, I could do anything I try to do.
Yep. No, I had the same, we had the same kind of discipline. You know, we called it white cap.
Oh yeah, we ended up with a white sailor cap.
yeah. And we had, I forget, the low rank was red, then blue, then white.
Oh, okay. And you had to achieve or accomplish certain things to get each level?
Yes. And the idea was safety, of course. If you were a red cap, you couldn't go in certain places. You couldn't be in a boat. You couldn't, you know, a lot of things you couldn't do. Mm-hmm. So the incentive for the campers was to really work hard and try to get to be a white cap. But as you say, there weren't very many of them. And it was always a tremendous honor. I had the same feeling.
So lots of people were blue caps, which meant they still had access to things, but they weren't considered the top level. Right.
It was, in fact, as a white cap, you could actually take the boats out alone.
Whoa.
Yeah, you know,
we couldn't do that.
Yeah, we were qualified. And, well, these were little barkentine sailboats.
We could take sailboats and canoes. I thought you meant the motorboats.
No, we had no motorboats.
We couldn't take the motorboats.
Yeah, there was. In fact, this was one of the first sort of experiences I had in a lifetime kind of interest in ecology. Was this particular lake, you could not have a motorboat. The residents around this lake and the county and whoever had declared all gasoline kind of boats off limits. And this was back in the in the 50s, you know, early
That was
50s.
brilliant because it
It
kept
was.
it from being polluted.
Oh, and it was an absolute beautiful lake. So,
And it would be a lot quieter too without all those motors.
oh yeah. So we were allowed to take, you know, you could take a blue cap out with you in your barkentine sailboat. You could lord it over them and teach them how to sail, and, you know, start to become a leader and a, you know, kind of adult thinking. So white cap was, you know, premier. You absolutely had to be one.
Now yours was all boys, your camp.
Yes.
Mine was mixed.
Yeah,
So
we were
I got to have some of those first boy-girl interactions and the girl-girl, boy-boy differences and all that going into pre-puberty and puberty because I went till I was 14, 15 years old.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things going on there that were
Yeah.
just sort of the subtext of camp. You know?
Yeah, I wish I'd had that. We were all, you know, even, you know, puberty and sub-puberty, we were all dreaming and thinking about what could happen as opposed to actually talking to
So
people.
you didn't have dances or something with a nearby Girl Scout camp or anything?
No.
Too bad.
No, we didn't. We all just harched around and did our knots and, you know, all that stuff.
Well, so another thing we wanted to talk about that we haven't touched on yet, I'm going to take a total left turn here back to our books, is about reviews.
Oh, yes.
And you brought up an interesting point about, you know, wanting reviewers to focus on certain things, and do authors have any ability to make that happen? And what brought that up?
I you know, of course, have enjoyed really nice reviews. And I always look at a review with interest, even, you know, good reviews. Wonder, what does an author like myself, what I would like someone to say in a review to really, one, teach me about what they wanted in that book, so that maybe, you know, in the future I could keep kind of a thought on that. And two, what they really liked or disliked about the book, and why. So I was kind of, I wanted to dialogue with you a little bit on what you look for. What I look for is someone who says, you know, I read the book, I found it to be either enjoyable or not enjoyable. I finished the book, and the reason I did was that I had this interest or that interest. And here's what I thought about the first of all, what I thought about the story, and what I thought about how the story was told. I have a number of reviews that start off with, I don't really like this genre. And I go to myself and I say, well, you know, why buy the book then? Because it clearly says on the front, you know, thriller fiction. I mean, it says it everywhere, fiction.
Wait, hold that up again because you did it too fast. Let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry. It says, you know, it says.
Just hold it up and hold it still.
It says fiction.
It says thriller fiction? Where does it say
Oh,
thriller fiction?
Yeah. It says fiction thriller.
Fiction thriller. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
See? So people can see that, all right? All you complainers, stop fetching, as
And
we
then-
say in Yiddish.
Oh, and on his revenge, I made it even clearer because I really firmly believe in this.
In fictional thriller, you put it right there.
Right under
Well, okay. So you get some people who just are in the wrong ballpark, and what is their friggin' problem? Okay, what else?
Well, yeah, but the funny part is, even though they're in the wrong ballpark, they still say, I like the story and I would recommend the book. Well, that's all great for my ego, but it doesn't give me a reason why you hate, if you don't like this genre, why you continue. And so,
Well, now we're going to bring up a very touchy subject.
okay,
Because you and I have touched on this before, but you belong to something called the Rave Reviews Book Club.
I do. In fact, I'm
Which
a board.
You're a board member. I used to belong to that early on, and I quit.
I remember.
And I quit for a lot of good reasons. And one of them is that there's a requirement to review other people's books. You don't have to pick particular books, but you're supposed to review a certain number per year. And the first few I picked, I'm sorry to say, were horrible. They were so horrible that I had to write to some of the people on the board and say, what do I do about this? I don't want to post this review on the one hand. On the other hand, this is really what I think. And it was a big dilemma, and we went back and forth, and we never really got in a good place. I said, never mind. And I just quit. But I think you might be encountering some people who are either required to do this or feel moved to do this, who really would not normally read in your genre. And that could be why they're starting out their review saying, this is not my favorite genre, this is not what I normally review, but somehow I got into this. But then when they keep going, right there, that's a really nice statement for you, because they didn't have to keep going. They could have just said, never mind, and put it down.
Yeah, I have to say, Sally, none of the rave reviews members who reviewed my book made that statement about the genre.
Oh, okay. So some other people then that somehow got into the category they weren't expecting, but then didn't end up hating it. Actually, maybe ended up liking it. So that's pretty good.
Well, I think that speaks to maybe the promotion, where they found the book and they promoted it. And I'm willing to talk, the Rave Reviews book club, the idea is that each member should review a book, read and review a book once a quarter. In other words, that would be 4 books a year. There is no requirement for quality of review, or that there's some quid pro quo or any of that. The review is by direction, instruction is to be an honest review. Right.
Except that's not what they really wanted. When I told them my honest review, and I ran it by some people that were in the higher up levels, they said, oh no, you can't post that. It's like, well, then I don't know what to do.
Yeah, well,
because I read the book, and,
No, I would agree with you then, but I am surprised that they would say that. Because
I'm not, because a lot of it is about not wanting to hurt people's feelings. They're very big on that in a lot of these groups. I belonged to several of them originally. And they're much more concerned about people's feelings than authenticity, honesty, integrity, or good writing, from what I can tell. Those are not their priorities. Their priorities are not to hurt people's feelings.
Well, I have to tell you, the head of the house, Nani Jules, is the most outspoken, honest, and direct person when it comes to what should we do if the book that we're reviewing is bad. And she said there have to be, in this world, books that are not good, and we have to talk about them.
Well, that is a big change in the last year and a half since I left, because that was not the tune people were singing when I was part of it. So I'm glad to hear that. That is a good change. I ended up belonging to the Alliance of Independent Authors and signed their ethical authors code, because I really believe in honest, authentic reviews where somebody gives it a lot of thought, really isn't out to hurt anyone, really doesn't have an agenda. I'm not even reviewing somebody necessarily in my same genre, so it's not competition. But if I have constructive comments that aren't positive, and when I say constructive, I mean I've got specific examples. I'm not just saying I hated it or it sucked. I'm really saying this is what I didn't like. This is the reason. This is what I think they should have done. This is what I wish they had. I'm very, very specific in my reviews. And I like that. And I wish, like you're saying, I wish people would be more specific and give examples and give reasons, and not just say, oh, this was great. I mean, it's nice to get a positive review, but if it doesn't say why, I'm sitting over here thinking, oh, they didn't even read it.
I have one review. It's a 5-star, and all it says is I liked it. Right.
And I got similar reviews for all 3 books recently, where it was like 2 or 3 sentences that were pretty vague. And I asked people in my little groups that I belong to in various social media to comment on that. And they're all telling me, oh, you should be glad to get any reviews. People that do a lot of reviews are busy. They don't have time to write. They probably just read and post quickly. They're telling me that I should suck it up and be glad. And I'm thinking, but this isn't a review. This is just a reaction. Doesn't anybody know the difference anymore?
Well, it's strange. I have to say, I do feel good when I see the 5-star. But I was kind of interested in what you would like to see in a review yourself.
Yeah, I want specifics. I want somebody to say, I read this book, and this is the way I feel about the plot, the characters, the philosophy, the storyline, the presentation or writing, anything specific. Not necessarily commenting on all of that if they don't want to, but they must have some specific reaction to some of it.
Right. Well, and also there are some really useful reviews that I have where they're not long. You know, didn't require the individual to do a lot of work. They're just very, very tight, very specific. Here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like. And I always appreciated that.
Well, I had a few people who reviewed my first book who really took issue with some of what I wrote, or the way I wrote it, or what I concluded, and they went after it with great glee and great specificity, and only gave me 2 or 3 stars or 4 at the most. I was delighted with those reviews. I was excited. I don't care how many stars they give. I care that they really engaged with what I wrote, and they really felt and thought very personally about what I wrote. They don't have to agree with me. They don't even have to like it, but they read the whole damn book. And by the way, my books are over 500 pages. Now that I've put them into print, we talked about that a minute ago. This is how big they are, each one. So if somebody's going to read my whole book and then give me some examples or specifics about what they didn't like about it, I am applauding. I am on my knees in gratitude that they spent that much time and gave that much effort to it. So that's what I'm looking for, are specifics.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that. And I know lately your books are getting some very nice reviews.
Some people are starting to get it. They're not for everybody. And the main thing people don't like right off is that they're all in the present tense. And I don't even explain that till the 3rd or 4th chapter of the first book. I'm not even sure I explain it at all in every book until maybe the 2nd or 3rd chapter. And it has to do with all time being simultaneous, and the people in the book trying to get used to that concept. Right. So that the author of the series, who is Clara, the main character, decides to have everything be in the present tense. And then her media coordinator, her media contact, SB, tries to standardize that when she goes back and edits it all. And people have interactions with SB or Clara about that. If they're in an interview or if they're writing their chapter or their section, they're saying, I don't know if I can keep this in the present tense, but I'll do the best I can, you know, things like that. And then I'll have somebody like Clara's mother who's in her 80s and she doesn't even try. Hers is in the past. She doesn't care. So there are all these different things going on, but for me, it's very intentional. Well, if someone just skims my books, they don't know that. They just think I don't know how to write. That I don't know what present tense is or whatever.
But you confuse your tenses, right?
And then I had somebody, I put every quote from every review on my website, by the way, and link to it. I don't care what people say, as long as I can tell they actually read the book. So somebody wrote something about my having my head so far up my you-know-what, because I was so full of myself, and on and on and on. And her main objection was that my main character seems to like herself.
Oh. Well, that's a shame, isn't it?
I know. I was like, wow, she read it enough to know that. I'm impressed.
Well, you mentioned present tense, and all my writing, novel-wise, is in the present tense, first person.
Now, see, with thrillers and suspense books, people kind of expect that. They don't object at all. But with science fiction, it's a debate. Yeah, there's a really big debate.
Yeah, I've had people who have been thrown off by that aspect. Yeah. And the reason I do it is I drag the reader along. There's no off stage story at all. The reader is seeing everything as it unfolds. The reader's part of it. And I just think it's more exciting. Well,
first person narrative does that. It gives you only what that person sees and knows. Right. In my books, there are a lot of different people being the first person, and there are some third person omniscient, and there are some other people that are narrating and writing diary entries and news articles, and they're all different things in my books. It's not just a straightforward story. So that doesn't appeal to everybody either.
Yeah.
You know, they just want chapters to follow chapters and just be like a regular story, then they're not going to like my books because they don't do that.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm not trying to please everybody. The people who would really like my books are the people that I'm writing for. And I'm not writing for anybody else. Right?
Yeah, no, I have kind of the same attitude.
But I'm trying to find those people. So if you have any newsletters or storylines or ways to find the people who would like my books, please send them to me. Because so far they're still hiding or not buying or not reading, and I don't know where they are.
Well, this is my. We'll talk about this at the end of the show. One of my fears, by the way, that I want to talk about is the number of people writing books.
Well, we aren't that far from the end of the show, so you may as well bring it up now. It's already 20 minutes to the hour here.
Okay. Wow. Time sure flies.
It does.
I did want to find out how many more books you're going to write in this Spanner series before we go there.
I'm planning to write 10, and I have them all planned out to some extent, and they're in the back of each book. I have appendices, and one of them is my list of books, titles, and a little synopsis for each one. Great. That I started from the very beginning having, and I just adjust them as I go along.
Okay. Interesting. Another author that I know very well is a fantasy author. And since I'm not a planner, I'm a pantster, this fantasy author has like 18 books already planned out. And I'm so impressed that people can do that, that it's amazing to me. I have to actually, instead of planning it, I got to write it. So, I just am very impressed with that.
Well, I do both. I do like a sketch of what I want to do, but I don't outline.
Yeah. Okay.
So I have like a frame, but I haven't planned the rooms.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I really do that I would call disciplined and tight is I write or try to write the last 3 lines of each book. And
interesting.
Yeah, I've done that, and then work to those last 3 lines. And I really get excited because the last 3 lines really are the essence of where I wanted to go. When you start with his revenge, those last 3 lines are really where I wanted to go with that. Or our justice, the last 3 lines are really where I wanted to go.
Now, do you use those last 3 lines of each book to start the next book?
No.
Oh, okay. So they stand alone in each book.
Yep, the last 3 lines. And they're not, the reader wouldn't know that, they're not quotes or anything. The reader wouldn't know that those lines were probably put down on paper a year prior to that book.
Well, now they're going to know.
They're going to know now, yes. Because as you know, with a series, it's always a wonder how you start the next book. How much of it, and I think that was another thing I wanted to ask you, how much of the previous do you put in the next, and that kind of thing, without boring everybody to tears. How do you do that?
Well, that is an interesting question, and I've really debated about that. I'm running into that for my 4th book. For the first book, that was the span of the whole 30-year term and had a lot of pieces in it of what the other books will contain. The second 2 books cover the same 5 years, each of those books. So I didn't really have to go backwards when I got to the 3rd book. But now with the 4th book, I'm advancing, overlapping a little bit and then advancing into the next 5 years or so. What am I going to include in that, and how do I bring it in? Obviously, that's to come in through the characters conversing or thinking or writing in their own diaries or contemplating, but I haven't decided how much to bring in because to me, it's a series. I don't expect people to start with book 4, and if they don't know what's going on, go back and get book 1, get a grip.
Well,
I'm not going to do a lot of rehashing is what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. Well, I dealt with the same thing, although having only 2 books out, I had to kind of come to grips with people who would say become familiar with his revenge and then not know that my girl even exists, and that's very possible. So
how different is his revenge in terms of time? Like, where do you pick up his revenge in terms of where my girl leaves off?
All 3, the whole 3 series is about a 2-month period of time. So.
And it's sequential.
Yes.
So basically, my girl stops, and his revenge is the next day or the next hour or the same week or something like that?
Yes, we come back to where we were at the end of my girl.
Okay. So then you're not going to put in, like, when we last saw this character, you're not going to do that. Okay.
Not at all.
Well, then on the back cover or the front cover or somewhere, you've got to refer to the fact that there is a first book.
Yeah, well, that is a comment that one person made. And I thought, well, let me try to do that through promo, and then we'll work it that way.
But if someone's standing there looking at your book in Amazon or in a bookstore or wherever they're going to see it, the second book is the only one they're seeing. Will they know there's a first book?
They won't have to.
It's not in the blurb?
Oh, it is in the blurb, but they won't.
Well, that's all I'm saying. Just put it somewhere where they're going to see it.
Yeah, but they don't, to read the book, they don't have to read the first book.
No, I understand. But if they wanted to know,
yes,
they would know from reading your blurb.
Yes, absolutely.
Sure. Well, that's how they get it from mine too. So that's cool. Well, you won't believe it, but it is 1/4 of the hour.
Okay.
And this is the time when I stop us from our wonderful conversation and add in the part I give to everyone, which is an opportunity to have a little time to philosophize or pontificate on my favorite big question and pick any part of it you want to respond to. And that question is, given all the local, personal, statewide or regional, national, global, scientific, environmental or technical, religious or spiritual, artistic or any other kind of changes you're aware of, which are the ones that evoke in you some kind of fear, which ones arouse in you some kind of hope? What do you want to talk about related to changes? Take it away, John Howell.
Thank you, Sally. I'm really focused as a writer on the world of writing. And the changes that I have seen since I started 3 years ago are, just the sheer number of books that are being published every year by indie authors and the sheer difficulty in attracting reader attention. When I started with My Girl, it was a lot easier to get people to, and that was in 2013, a lot easier to get people to say, oh yeah, well that book's available, and I think I'll pick it up and I'll try it. And I've noticed that with His Revenge, it's getting harder and harder. The standard ways to reach the reader are no longer becoming the accepted ways of actually selling a book. For instance,
like what?
Well, the conventional wisdom was you start a platform, you get a platform like a blog, you start publishing the fact that you're out there, that you want to be a writer, kind of bring people in, and then use that blog as an opportunity to tell people, okay, we're available, have blog tours and have all kinds of excitement around the introduction of the book. I'm getting a sense, and this is a fear I have, getting a sense that people are so either sensitized or desensitized to blog tours and books and that, on blog tours, that people are no longer even paying attention to that. The fear I have is I'm not really certain what they are paying attention to. I know Twitter used to be a real effective way of getting a book title out there and getting people to understand that book is available. I am not certain at this stage that Twitter is still effective that way. And I'm only saying because of the amount of proliferation of not only books, but other products of other messages on Twitter. So I don't think Twitter is a given as far as having a number of followers, then all of a sudden those equate to a number of readers. And so I'm sort of sitting here, that change, I sort of look at it as, when you're filling a glass and you start and you have just a little bit at the bottom, and then all of a sudden that glass becomes full. The change I'm seeing is there are so many writers, so many messages on social media, and so many readers of messages of social media that who no longer respond to the message that's there, that is becoming very difficult. Now, this kind of spells what I would think is bad news for those of us who self-pub and are indie writers, because we're going to have to figure out a new and different way to promote our books.
Well, they're trying to push us into paying for it.
Well, the paying for it part is kind of interesting as well. The change I see in the paying part is that the $200 or $250 or $450 that these folks are asking isn't producing the same result either.
Right.
I'm seeing more and more authors become more and more disappointed that they've laid out the money and they got no response. By no response, I'm talking about not enough to, one, recover the funds, or two, to move their book up on that magic Amazon list.
Yeah, it's a flooded field. I agree. And I think the other area that you haven't mentioned, I would agree with you thoroughly on everything you said, John. It's a good analysis. The other area that's really changed would be awards. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think we're in the same kind of spot with awards. Most awards are sponsored, and most of the award winners have gone out on what I would call an exhaustive campaign to get votes for their particular book. So when I see the top 50 books as published by X service, I look at that and say, I see the top 50 authors who have been able to get a popularity contest together and have pulled that off successfully. And good on them. I think that if that's the secret to selling more books, then that's great.
But is it? Do they actually get sales from those awards?
I don't know. I have not seen what I would call a significant analysis of what does it mean to be a top 50 author, a top 35, or top 15 even.
Or to get one of these awards that you see, there's so many proliferating. Like, I think there's 3 every week now that I see somebody claims to have won or be a finalist in or something.
Right. I think it's interesting if that award came to that author, let's say a nomination by a group of their peers, and then the award came to that author with a closed vote of those peers. I would accept that as being something that was really, really good. I would also accept, and the readers should accept, that award means something. I think today readers are looking at awards and saying, well, I happen to know that one can be bought. Or I happen to know that one, I've read a couple of those books that had awards and they weren't what I thought they were.
Yeah,
and
or you have to spend a lot of money for the so-called entry fee or the reader's fee. So unless you're willing, it's basically like paying for advertising that you may or may not even get the award, but you have to pay to play.
Well, and if that award, I mean, in my own comfort, excuse me, in my own comfort, if I was sure that by spending that kind of money and that kind of effort that it would track to book sales, I probably would contemplate doing it. But today, I'm not totally convinced. And there's some really good information that's coming out of the author community where someone will go ahead and do that and then have the, I would say, integrity to go ahead and tell us all what happened as a result of that.
Yeah, I love that. I love when people publish, I paid this much for this experience and here's what I got.
I do too. And there's some authors that do a really good job at that. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate that kind of positive interaction because it helps me.
Yeah,
I can say I've from my first book to this book, I have increased my Twitter followers 5,000-fold. I mean, I just have more Twitter. I shouldn't say 5,000-fold, 1,000-fold. Thank you. And I can't say that those followers and those tweets have produced the kind of results that I would have expected.
I completely agree. And I actually have increased my Twitter following from 0 to 5,000, almost 6,000. Well, so that is 5,000-fold, 6,000-fold. And I have to say it has not shown me sales. And in fact, what I find is that it's mostly authors connecting with other authors. And we aren't necessarily each other's readers.
No, that is another concern. How to get to the readership, how to get to
right. That's been my question all along. Where are the readers hanging out? Because
Yeah.
most of my followers and friends and peeps and everything on all these different social media are authors. And part of
Right.
it's because of my show. But
Yes.
part of it is that that's just who I find in the groups that I join. And even when I join a group that says it's for readers and authors, it's mostly authors.
Right. Well, I love all my followers. I mean, I think they're terrific. And
But they don't buy my books.
well, that's, you know, that isn't, that's, I always take it as that's my problem. You know, that's not really their problem. But the other side of it is it takes a lot of work to maintain social media.
You're right.
Every
And
day.
that brings me to the very last part of our show, which is what would you like to announce? Please give us your website URL where you have your blog and other things that you do every week, and what else you want people to know about you, because we only have 5 minutes left.
Okay. Let me give you my blog first. It's pretty easy. It's johnwhowell.com, and you have to put the HTTP in front of that, and www if you're in some foreign country somewhere.
But please spell it all out, because not everybody knows how to spell those names.
Okay. JOHNWHOWELL.com.
Excellent.
And
you have your one release that came out last month and another one coming out later this year?
Later this year, mid-year. It's in the, I've finished with it. Now it goes to a professional editor stage.
Okay. Any other announcements?
Any other announcements? Well, I'm going to be publishing my non-series book called Consequences of Childhood at the end of the year. And it will be an entirely different book. It won't be a classic thriller. It will be a thriller, but it also has a ghost in it. So I'm probably going to get some paranormal flack as a result of that. But
maybe not. Maybe you'll get some paranormal readers. That would be awesome.
Well, then the problem there, Sally, is I've disappointed them because my paranormal doesn't behave the way a paranormal should. You know.
Well, I think you'd be surprised at how wide a range that is. Be sure and let me know about that. If I have time to read, I might want to read that. I'm not so big on the explosion books, as you know, even though I did read part of your first book. I'm just not so big on the chase them and terrorists and all that kind of stuff. But I'm interested maybe in your fourth one. So let me know. If I have time, I might be one of your readers. That would be awesome.
Understood. Yeah.
And as everybody knows, I'm Sally Ember, EDD. My website is SALLYEMBER.com. You can find all my links there. You can find discount codes for paperbacks on CreateSpace. You can find links to book trailers and reviews and other interviews like this, conversations on changes, lots and lots of other stuff on my website. And I blog regularly and I reblog pretty often to really good stuff about science, science fiction, feminism, politics, reading, writing, all kinds of stuff that I'm interested in, and you might be too. And I also have a crowdfunding campaign to help me keep going in my world of writing and reading and hosting this show and improving, getting covers and all the things that cost money, maybe paying for ads. I don't know. I haven't done that yet. So please go to Patreon, www.patreon.com/Sally Ember, SALLYEMBER. And you'll see some videos and even me singing a terrible song. If you want to make fun of me, that's fine. If you contribute on Patreon, $4 or more, you could get rewards up to and including discounts on editing and proofreading, free ebooks, and things like that to help me keep going. So you can also donate through PayPal right on my site to help me. And you can also do that with other authors. The main way to help us is please read our books, buy our books, and write reviews.
Yes, thank you very much. By the way, I didn't get a chance to say my blog is a daily blog.
Yes, I've noticed that you are quite prolific, and that's very impressive. You have your photography, you have your jonkus, which are your haiku, you have your 10 things not to do when, and then you have your writing prompts, and then you have, what's the other one? You have a regular thing you do on Friday?
Well, that's the jonku on Friday.
Oh, that's the jonku. Okay, what's Thursday?
Saturday has a stream of consciousness, which is a prompt.
Sunday,
Sunday is 52 views of the Gulf.
Right.
And Monday is the top 10 list. Tuesday is anything's possible.
Okay.
So I kind of go with whatever. Wednesday is story day, and I have a serial story there.
Yes.
Thursday is a little personal. So what I do is I bring some of my life into the blog. So that's basically the way the week goes.
Well, I'm apologizing to all of my viewers who wanted to watch this live that it didn't go live. I'm hoping it recorded and that you're watching it because it recorded, and that I will try to put links everywhere and help people find it later. And I will send those to you, John, if they are different than what you already have.
Okay. Sounds good.
And thank you. Thank you very much for coming back on my show and bringing your great conversational skills and questions and answers and everything you brought up.
Well, thank you, Sally. It was a treat to be here. And whether anybody sees it or not, I enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. And as I say at the end of every show, go well with your changes. Signing off.